Hello and what is up YouTube? My name is G3 Iron and today we are taking a look at the 5 worst passives in PoE Legion League 3.7. These are 100% subjectively terrible keynodes, both on the passive tree as well as on one particular ascendancy that did indeed make the worst list. Thanks to everybody for participating in our community poll and for letting your voice be known on what topics you would like to discuss. So we're going to jump really quickly into our disclaimer about what this discussion is not and about what this discussion is. So first off, what this discussion is not. This isn't an overview of the least popular passives in 3.7. If you want that information, it's available to you. Seriously, you can just quickly go and look at PoE Ninja builds and see what's popular and what's not popular on the heat map to know what's popular. We're not looking at that. We're not spending time looking at that. What this discussion is a complete and total subjective, meaning it's just my opinion, biased and most likely wrong opinions regarding passive power levels. So I'm depending on all of you to correct me in all of the numerous ways that I'm sure I will be wrong in this discussion, but that's what this discussion is. It's the 5 worst passive keynodes. So we're talking about the big keynodes on the passive tree, not the little teeny ones or the travel nodes, because that really wouldn't make for interesting discussion. So here we go. Our first keynode is Mortal Conviction. So the reasons why Mortal Conviction made the list, we'll hop into these. So Mortal Conviction is simply this. You can only have one non-banner aura on your particular character, and non-banner aura skills reserve no mana. So, on the one hand, this is a really cool ability and is almost build enabling in that you could potentially stack a bunch of auras on your potentially blood magic character if you could stack multiple auras on it. The problem is you can't. Mortal Conviction's entire design is to allow somebody that has chosen the blood magic passive, which replaces and reduces all of your mana to 0 and replaces mana usage with life usage. So it replaces all of that build functionality and build flexibility with just using your life pool to reserve auras. Now, on the one hand, this could be build enabling, right? If there's just one aura that your build wants to use. But it offers a less powerful version of that same ability using one aura without reserving any mana or without reserving any life than an Essence Worm. An Essence Worm is a unique ring that states that socketed aura gems do not reserve any mana and they provide +2 to the level of the socketed gem. So on the one hand, you could argue, well, Mortal Conviction doesn't require you to give up a ring slot. I would argue that using Essence Worm doesn't require you to use Blood Magic or take Mortal Conviction. So you save on potentially 4 passive points to go and get Mortal Conviction along with any other passive points that you're spending to get down there. So I feel like Mortal Conviction really restricts your build choices and your build options, and it's not a keynote passive that is niche enough that says, oh, I can really go and build around this. It's so niche that it's build enabling in one sense, but if it's build enabling, it's probably more better described as build disabling. Because really there are so many auras that are available in Path of Exile right now that just to limit your build to a single aura, yeah, I mean, I guess you get to use banners, but anyway, I don't even want to hear it from all of you that are saying, oh, banners are great and it's totally worth it. No. You can equip banners and multiple auras on many other characters if you don't take Mortal Conviction. So Mortal Conviction, no. It made the list. It's not good. It is not good right now. Second passive notable that made the tree is Unwavering Stance. I have a love-hate relationship with Unwavering Stance, and I can already hear some of you screeching at me. Unwavering Stance reads as such: cannot evade enemy attacks, and you cannot be stunned. So this is, I think, some good design is here with Unwavering Stance in that there is a drawback that you cannot evade enemy attacks, but you're never going to be stunned, right? That's great. That's some good trade-off design. However, its location is atrocious. So when we look at the passive tree, and you look at where Unwavering Stance is located, it's all the way over here on the bottom left side of the tree, near and in between the Duelist and the Marauder passive start points. So on the one hand, you might say, oh, well, why does that location mean anything? Well, first off, it's not behind anything, right? So it's not gated by anything. So you're not really getting anything going towards Unwavering Stance. You're going out of your way, essentially, to go grab Unwavering Stance. You can see some of the notables that are around it. There's some stun threshold stuff across the path from it. There's Steadfast, which is some Fortify effect, which is pretty nice. And then there's Fending, which is like knockback interactions. And then there's some life down here near Bloodless, as well as Soul of Steel, which gives you some additional fizz reduction and some armor. So there's some nice things over there, but there's nothing really on the tree that says, oh, I'm on my way to Unwavering Stance, so here's a bunch of added life, or here's a bunch of added damage, or here's a bunch of other utility skills or nodes that I can simply go ahead and pick up along the way. So you're really on your way to Unwavering Stance if you're getting Unwavering Stance. That's the only reason to go over, really, and get it. That being said, when you look at Unwavering Stance in its upside, it has the upside of not being stunned. That's great, but where's its location on the tree? Well, it's between the Duelist and the Marauder. Why does that matter? Well, because if you look on the passives for Ascendancies, you can see that Juggernaut has got Unstoppable, which simply says you cannot be stunned. You've got the Berserker, which has got Rite of Ruin, which you cannot be stunned while you have at least 25 rage. You've got the Gladiator, who's got Pain Forged underneath the Duelist, which is you cannot be stunned by hits that you block. And then you've got the Champion that interacts with stun in that you cannot be stunned while you have Fortify, which is on its way to the Fortify node, so you're probably going to take that, so you're pretty much not going to be stunned. And then you've got the Slayer with Endless Hunger, which you cannot be stunned while you're leeching, and you're leeching pretty much all the time while you're a Slayer. So, the placement of Unwavering Stance is really the biggest problem that I've got with it. I like it as a design choice, but pretty much if you're playing Duelist or if you're playing Marauder, chances are you're playing one out of those 5 Ascendancies. Yes, Chieftain is over there as well, so sorry if you're playing a Chieftain. I guess you can go for that otherwise. But if you're playing any of these other Ascendancies that are not Duelist or Marauder, it is an incredible, wild, unhelpful journey for you to make your way down to grabbing Unwavering Stance. It's really far away from the Witch up on the top side of the tree. It's really far away from the Shadow and from the Ranger. The Templar is probably the next closest to actually getting down there. So its location is atrocious, and its cost is too high in relationship to other possible helpful nodes, i.e. it's not on its way to anything. It's not beneficial for those other particular classes. So Unwavering Stance is an unfortunate casualty of its placement on the passive tree. Next up is Conduit. So, Conduit is actually really, really fun, and I enjoy it. I enjoy using it when I'm playing support. I enjoy using it when I'm playing on minion builds. I think it's a fun mechanic. That being said, while it is build enabling, it's too niche. All it does is shares endurance, frenzy, and power charges with nearby party members. It doesn't necessarily give you an increased chance to generate those endurance, frenzy, or power charges. It just says, hey, if you got them, you can now share them with other people, which is nice, but in a lot of gameplay throughout Path of Exile, most party play, at least, that the vast majority of party play that actually happens is actually players pretty substantially spread out. Yes, there are the exception to the rule, which is tight-knit groups of players who are staying close together, but the vast majority of players are not actually nearby to one another when people are racing and rushing through maps and leveling one another. A lot of the times people are 2 or 3 screens away. One person's computer is slower than another person's. So Conduit is a really, really great niche skill for supports, for minion builds, and for players that want to be in a dedicated group of players, but only providing that single line of abilities to simply share your endurance, frenzy, and power charges, it's just lackluster. It's meh. And then on top of that, it's not placed in an ideal or great location for non-energy shield builds. So when we are looking at Conduit, you can see that it is over here on the right-hand side of the tree, just above the Scion starting location, between essentially the Shadow as well as the Witch. So here's Conduit. Now you might say, Iron, hey, you can just go up and grab Overcharged, which is 8% chance to gain a Power, Frenzy, or Endurance charge on kill. Yes, that's true, but I think it would be much, much more interesting if those types of charge generation mechanics were at least around Conduit or near Conduit, in a similar fashion to, let's say, the way how Runebinder and Ancestral Bond are behind a bunch of nodes that interact with totems and that interact with brands. You've essentially got this standalone Keystone that's just here like, hey, I'm here for you to pick up and I've got some benefits. But what are those benefits? Yes, on the one hand, it's a low cost because it's only one passive point alongside a tree that you are already passing through. But other than that, it just doesn't seem like it's worth it for a single point. Like, why wouldn't you just take that single point and maybe try to squeeze out another level and take 2 passive points to go grab another jewel node if your potential build can actually go out and squeeze out another jewel node? It just doesn't seem like the placement of it is worthy to go out and really grab it. And because these are on kill effects for Overcharged, if you're just playing support and you just want to share those a bunch of charges, or if you just want to specifically make a character that, let's say, just stacks a bunch of endurance charges and then shares them with the party, that's a really, really cool concept. Or stacks a bunch of frenzy charges and then shares them with the party. That's a really cool concept, but chances are you're not going to be killing everything, and you're not going to be the fastest character in your particular party that's killing everything and actually getting the hits to actually destroy the monsters, meaning that Overcharged isn't going to apply to you. So there's kind of this like little bit of tension. Like, if you want to kill stuff and get charges, you can do that. If you don't want to kill stuff, good luck getting charges, right? So there's just a little bit of a trade-off that I feel like exists there with Conduit. And so it's being in a non-ideal place, only a single line of abilities, and being too niche are the reasons why I included it on the list. All right, next one, 4th. Blood Magic. Blood Magic got included. It's right up there with Mortal Conviction. I didn't place it in the same number because I think Blood Magic is actually arguably worse right now than Mortal Conviction. And before you start screeching at me, all of you Melee players who are using Blood Magic in 3.7, here's the reason why it made the list, in my opinion. The number of useful things to accomplish with mana right now is simply too great. There's too many things that you can do with mana manipulation, whether that's with the number of auras that are present in Path of Exile, whether that's banners, etc., or simply doing things like Mind Over Matter, where you've essentially added tankiness simply for having extra mana. So by taking Blood Magic, it just feels like it's out of place. I understand that it's an iconic concept to use your magic internally, your own blood, sacrificing your life to actually go and use skills. I think that's a really cool concept, but the reality is, in the cost-benefit analysis of a lot of builds, of most builds in PoE, Blood Magic simply is a terrible, terrible idea. Now, on top of that, the things that Blood Magic in itself actually does is it simply removes all mana and you spend life instead of mana for skills. So on the one hand, you're never going to be out of mana, unable to cast skills unless you're dead. And casting your skills now helps kill you. There's going to be some ways that you can actually use that to your advantage. There's going to be some ways to manipulate that to your advantage. But for the most part, Blood Magic, when compared with, for instance, something like Chaos Inoculation, simply doesn't compare. You compare Blood Magic that goes, hey, you lose all of your ability to use mana, which means you lose most of your ability to use auras and huge, massive defensive and offensive abilities for reserving your mana. And what you're going to get is, you can always use your skills as long as you're still alive, which if you just had mana, you probably could do that anyway. Whereas you compare that to something like Chaos Inoculation, and it's like, hey, this one single damage source in the entirety of the game, you're immune to it. Like, that's really good. That's a really good node. Blood Magic is just like, hey, look at me, I'm over here. I'm kind of like the life version of Chaos Inoculation, except I'm terrible. All right, so then behind Blood Magic in combination, as if Blood Magic isn't bad enough, Behind Blood Magic, you've got a 10% increased maximum life node and another 10% increased maximum life node. Now, these two nodes in and of themselves are really, really strong. There's not many other 10% nodes on the entirety of the tree. It's a lot of HP. However, none of that HP is connected with Blood Magic. So Blood Magic just has this massive, massive downside and then has limited potential upside, which really, really is a bummer. It used to be that Chaos Inoculation actually used to be set up in a very similar fashion, and they used to have Energy Shield nodes behind CI. That was a long time ago. And eventually, as Energy Shield got pushed to higher and higher amounts of flat Energy Shield, and it was seen that you could simply get to much, much larger life pool totals with Energy Shield than you could with life, those nodes got removed away, and Energy Shield continually has been nerfed throughout the history of Path of Exile. I think Blood Magic is in a state right now where it would need to be revived in such a way that there is so much more HP available to you for going Blood Magic that it makes it worth the opportunity cost of getting rid of all of your auras, as well as losing your ability to actually have a buffer between your skill cost and your HP, that you're essentially costing your HP. You are costing your HP to actually use your abilities. All right, so that's Blood Magic. Our last one is an Ascendancy that made the list. It is the Pendulum of Destruction. It is over on the Elementalist wheel, which the Elementalist was meta all of last year. Everybody was playing Elementalist. I want to say the vast majority of our guild was playing Elementalist. Every single league, it was either Arc or some other form of Blade Vortex, Triple Herald, Elementalist. It was all over the place. So, on the one hand, this is deservedly a crap node because I guess in GGG's mind, cycling through and nerfing and balancing things, sometimes things are going to be meta and so they're going to be great, and sometimes they're not going to be meta and so they're going to be terrible. Right now is Pendulum of Destruction's turn to be terrible. Okay, reasons why it made the list. First off, what it does, it gains 75% increased elemental damage for 5 seconds, and it gains 75% increased area of effect for 5 seconds. And these two things trade off between one another. It's simply uninteresting in that regard, okay? You either have got increased elemental damage or you have got increased area of effect. Both of those things individually are available elsewhere on the tree, as well as through Ascendancy choices, as well as through your gearing options. So there's lots of other places to get these sort of things. So for being an Ascendancy notable, it's like, hey, all of those things that you already want to do, there's some juiced up, souped up notables here for you to take. Now that's cool, and that's actually present throughout a lot of different Ascendancies. So just because there are stats that are better through Ascendancy choices or more efficient through Ascendancy choices, that's not what makes this terrible. What makes it terrible is that it's uninteresting in that the changing of the timing of it simply makes it so you can't plan around it. So because you change every several seconds or whatever, you can't say, oh, I'm going into a boss room, and so I want the damage at this point in time for my single target. So I want 5 seconds of increased elemental damage type. Like, let's say, the Blood and Sand styles of gameplay and styles of auras that are now available, where you can essentially toggle which of two different types of effect you would actually like to be available to you at any given point in time. That's interesting design. You as a player being given agency to choose which of these two different effects you want. That's really cool. 5 seconds of random benefits bouncing between the two. How am I supposed to time that when I go into a boss encounter? It's like, well, just wait 5 extra seconds and then you'll get the buff that you'd like to use. Okay, but I could have been dealing damage to the boss for those 5 seconds. Would he have been dead anyway? Oh, well, now I'm mapping, right? Which this is what this legitimately feels like on an Elementalist now. Oh, I'm bossing, so I would like to have increased elemental damage for 5 seconds. Oh, but now I'm mapping and I'm clearing packs. Don't have that increased elemental damage available to me, but I have increased area of effect. Okay, it's nice to have the increased area of effect, but in 5 seconds from now, I won't have that. So I'll just feel worse. So essentially, you have this cycle when you're playing an Elementalist now using Pendulum of Destruction, where you're constantly every 5 seconds or so feeling like something is missing from my build. Something that would be cool for this particular notable is just cut these in half, like just straight up cut the bonuses in half, and then just make it so that way they're both always in effect, right? It's not every 5 seconds. It's, hey, you've only got 37.5% increased elemental damage and 37.5% increased area of effect. And you just have it. You just have that as a flat, reliable source across the board. You don't have to worry about this whole changing mechanics every couple of seconds thing, because it feels weird. You can't plan around it. It's available elsewhere, and it's otherwise just uninteresting to spend 2 passive points to get towards. Okay, so those were my 5 passives that I thought are the most terrible keynodes and ascendancies on the tree at this point in time. I'm sure you're going to tell me that I'm wrong on at least some, if not all of these. So I would love to hear from each and every one of you. What do you think are the worst keynodes on the passive tree at the moment? And what do you think are some of the worst ascendancy nodes on the tree at the moment? Thanks so much for watching, and I hope today is the day a Mirror of Calandra drops for you.
Thanks for watching that video. If you'd like more information on any of our discussion points today, you can see them down below in the video description. If you'd also like to join our Discord or support our Patreon, you can do so with the links down below. Thanks again, and big shout out to all of our Patreon supporters.